And now a conversation with Charles Ross, Assistant Director, Growth Initiatives for the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech Enterprise Innovation Center in Atlanta, Georgia.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
One of the nice things about having Charles on the show today is he's also an engineer. And he's in a different world today than he was when he trained to be an engineer, which is actually helping entrepreneurs. Now, the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech is what we call an incubator.
That's correct.
And even though you do more than just incubate, let's talk a little bit about what ATDC does for students and also entrepreneurs who would like to accelerate their ideas.
ATDC has a pretty rich history. We're actually in the process of starting to celebrate our 30th anniversary. And our mission is pretty simple. It's really to help entrepreneurs launch and build successful companies within the state of Georgia. And those are entrepreneurs that are both within the university setting, but also throughout the state of Georgia.
Now, you have two different types of entrepreneurs, or multiple types. You have those who are in the academic setting. That might be faculty, it might be students, and then you have those entrepreneurs in the community that have access to it as well. So let's talk about engineering students or engineering faculty that might have an idea. Tell me about the process they go through to get access to your center and your services.
You know, Georgia Tech is somewhat unique because we have this history of working 30 years with innovation, commercialization of technologies. And so we actually have a unit within our group that will take a look at all of the technology that's being developed within the university and try to put those technologies into various buckets. Some technologies are really appropriate to be licensed to corporations. Others should go into a startup. So we try to identify early on those technologies that are really ripe for a startup and then provide benefits and consulting advice to help those companies and those faculty members develop their concepts.
So you're actually being proactive in mining the university for technologies that it might have commercialization potential.
Right, and actually, usually on a typical annual basis, we're seeing about 300 plus invention disclosures. But as you know, invention disclosure is a long way away from a viable business. And so we try to triage those invention disclosures, and typically, over a long period of time, you're usually looking at about every 100 invention disclosures will result into maybe 1 or 2 startup businesses. Recently, though, I think we've been getting a little better at this. Last year, we actually matured about 7 companies out of that process.
So you basically say you look at 300 on an annual basis.
Right.
Tell me what the wow factor is for the 2 or 3 that actually make it to those that you really want to work with that have company potential.
What we look to do in matching those technologies into business opportunities is we employ someone that really has some experience in working with startups and building businesses. And probably number one is being able to find a really compelling problem that's pretty big problem, and where you can really see that monetizing a solution to that problem. And so when we can see technologies that really can be applied to big problems in the world, that usually gets our attention.
And then a lot of people think you have to have a business plan right out of the chute. I just read an article yesterday that says, don't worry about a business plan until you have a business model. And that really means, basically, you have to prove there's a market there for that. So how do you help someone, potential engineer or faculty member, determine whether or not there's a real market for this technology or this innovation that they've developed?
I think the thing that we do probably that has the most impact is getting these faculty members in touch with the market as quickly as possible. So we help to facilitate early adopters and trials and those types of things. And then the other thing that we do is we help connect them to funding that allows them to mitigate some of their early technical risk and market risk. Right. And that funding is usually in the form of some SBIR funding or also some grant funding that we have available through the state of Georgia. So we look to get them into the marketplace as quickly as possible and get that feedback. But the other thing I will mention is on the business plan, the thing that we do focus on is really on how to articulate your value proposition. Because it's really about selling, and you have to sell to customers, you have to sell to your first full-time CEO that comes into a company, and you got to be able to sell a compelling story.
How do you determine and counsel people that really sometimes the inventor isn't the best one to take it forward?
When we're working with many of our faculty members fit in that bucket. And what they really do well is research and development, and that's what they want to do. And so we don't necessarily try to put faculty members into a CEO box if that's not what they're looking to do. Now, we do have some exceptions to that, but to the most part, we look to link up those professors and those ideas to experienced business professionals that have that kind of startup experience.
So you've been in business 30 years. What kind of success rates do you have there?
30 years, we've graduated about 120 or so companies. And we define graduation as really when a company gets to some level of sustainability. And that kind of differs based on the company's model. So for a pharmaceutical company, it might be just getting through certain levels of FDA regulation or approvals. For some of the software-based companies, we look at more tangible metrics like actual revenues coming into the companies.
Based on the difficult economic times we've had the last couple of years, are you seeing a change in the demographics of the people who are trying to become entrepreneurs today? Are you seeing more people downsize from large corporations that are potentially looking to create a business opportunity? And has this economic challenge created more competition for those who want to get access to your services?
So what we're really seeing now, Rich, is we're seeing the real players, the real entrepreneurs. Many of the folks that were maybe saying transferring from corporate America into the entrepreneurial space, my experience has been that when the market is really doing well and frothy, that's when you see a lot of those players. People who really thought that they were comfortable with risk and then really saw what risk was like have left. And so what we're really seeing is the hardcore entrepreneur. The other thing that we're seeing is more of an emphasis on these businesses that require less capital to get off the ground and to be sustainable.
So the question I'm going to ask again is, do engineers serve entrepreneurs well, or do they actually perform well as entrepreneurs leading an entrepreneurial venture?
I think when you look at what makes a great engineer and what makes a great entrepreneur, there's some overlap, but there's some differences. And you look at an engineer, and you look at someone that really deals and thrives in complexity, someone that's very accurate communicator, someone that has very deep networks, but very probably narrow but deep networks. And then you look at an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur has broad networks. Entrepreneur is an accurate communicator, but they're a great promoter. An entrepreneur is someone who maybe can deal with complexity, but they like to make things really simple. So there's some overlap, but then there's some things that you need to do as an engineer if you really want to be a great entrepreneur. And you need to understand what those things are and be able to bring those skill sets to bear.
And that's part of the process you go through at the Advanced Technology Development Center, is to evaluate whether or not the people coming in really have the skills to lead a business.
Right, and if they don't have the skills, that's okay. Surround yourself with people who have those skills.
Now, I want to thank you for coming on ASME Innovate Show today.
Fantastic, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Charles.
it. Okay.